I first suggested the idea of the Fantastic Four to my publisher, he liked it because he wanted to do a group of superheroes because he had heard that the DC book, the Justice League, was selling well. So Martin, my publisher, he said, hey, Stan, why don't you come up with a bunch of characters, make a team, and let's us do a book like that. And that's when I did the Fantastic Four, but I didn't want to do it like that. I wanted to do it our own way with its own style. Well, originally, when I dreamed up the idea of the Fantastic Four, I wanted to try to go away from the usual superhero cliches. I knew I had to have a group, but I wanted them to be more like a family.
Johnny, are you feeling okay? Maybe you have a fever.
Gee, Mom, thanks for the concern, but I've never felt better.
And instead of the girl being a helpless female who's always having to be rescued by the superhero in every episode, I wanted her to be a fighting member of the team.
Somebody needs a breath mint.
And instead of the teenager being the obligatory sidekick, I wanted him also to be a member of the team, and I wanted to give him a real personality.
Nice try, Robo-Chump!
The other member, of course, being the Thing. Again, I wanted to get a character who was sort of a semi-monster and make him one of the heroes. And I thought I could have a lot of drama and a lot of humor based on the Thing.
I see Stretch found your matchstick, and you're in trouble as usual. Who do you want me to hit first?
And of course, the Human Torch, Johnny Storm. He was always teasing Ben, the Thing, and vice versa.
Watch it, sis! Hot stuff coming through!
Come back here, Flame Brain, so I can give you a nice big hug!
I was just making you breakfast in bed.
Johnny!
You made it on me!
They were best friends, but they were always fighting with each other and arguing, and I know I used to be that way with all of my friends.
I'm real proud of you, Flame Brain.
Aw, thanks, big guy. That means a lot to me.
The leader of the group, I thought it would be fun, while he's a hero, to make him so wrapped up in himself and he's so intelligent that he bores people because he talks and talks and he, like me.
This creature is a resident of a subdimension I discovered. A negative zone, if you will.
He over-explains, he uses big words, and that would give one of the other members of the group a chance to always be making fun of him.
It's truly incredible to think that...
Reed! Big monster about to eat us, remember?
Right, sorry.
So I said to myself, if I were a superhero, I wouldn't keep my identity secret. I'd want everybody to know. What's the point of being great if people don't know it and you can't enjoy their adulation and their cheering and their applause?
Hey, make me look good, whatever your name is.
Obviously, in real life, people don't always get along perfectly together. So I wanted to treat them like a family with their own personalities, their own relationships to each other, and try to make this more of a real-life story rather than just the good guy fighting the bad guy.
It's not magic.
Johnny, don't!
You are the worst sister ever.
For the smartest man in the world, you're an idiot.
I hate you.
You guys side with him? Don't you get it?
There was one other thing I always tried to do in the Fantastic Four. I used to feel that the dialogue in comics was too basic. Everybody spoke the same way. I had the most fun with the Thing. I just loved that character. So I made up the expression when he went into action. He'd say, "It's clobbering time." When I would write the dialogue, I would even imagine the tone of voice. The thing was, yeah, you did this and you sounded like that. Whereas Reed would be talking like this in something of a monotone, and he'd never stop, and he'd say, I think if the thermostat is attached to the thingamajig, it'll make this happen and that. And the others would be going, yeah, just do the thing, you know. And Johnny would be saying, hey, let's cut out of here, man, I got, you know. So it was all trying again to make them realistic and to make the reader feel he knows them, relates to them, and if he met them in the street, he'd recognize them.
I was a comic book fan for many, many years, and one day went to the newsstand, my corner candy store actually, and there was this comic that was so different than anything that had ever appeared before. I think the style and the art and the entire concept of these characters who bickered, it gave a different feel, and I started to really enjoy it.
When the sales figures came in, it did very well. On one very early issue, on the top of the masthead and the cover, I wrote, "The world's greatest comic magazine." I really thought it was. I don't think it would have been as popular or successful if it hadn't been illustrated by Jack Kirby. He was the master. In fact, I gave him the nickname the King, Jack King Kirby. Jack was more than just the artist, because I didn't write a full script. I would just tell Jack what I wanted the story to be. Like when I created the Fantastic Four, I wrote a 1.5-page outline of just who the characters were and what the plot would be, and I gave it to Jack, and I said, now go ahead and draw it. And Jack threw in a lot of things that I hadn't even mentioned. Jack really was practically the co-writer with me.
His way of expressing shock and awe or power or sinister faces was incredible. When you read the pages, you really felt the real palpable expressions going on. You felt the emotions of the characters.
I can't say strongly enough what a great illustrator and story man Jack was, and what a pleasure it was to work with him. After writing more than 100 issues, there can't be very much more that you have to say. So I turned it over to other of our freelance writers.
After Stan left, a couple of other guys filled in for a little while. Some of the stuff felt almost like a reiteration of a lot of the things that Stan had done before. There was less of a sense of change with the team at that point and more the sense of the illusion of change.
Every writer, in trying to figure out what they wanted to do, split up the group.
They would take one or more of the regular FF characters out of the mix, like Sue, or The Thing, or Torch, and put another character in for a little while, like Crystal, or Medusa, or Power Man came in for a little while. On a short-term basis, those are really clever ideas, and they help mix things up. But what they do more importantly is that every single one of those team iterations collapsed.
To me, the Fantastic Four was a family book. It was a family book starting with the first issue. It was a group that needed to be together. They reacted off each other. They could have problems like any family, but they shouldn't be split apart just for the sake of splitting them apart. So I wanted to return the characters to their basics, and that was the way I went about it, was to really hammer home the relationships that Stan and Jack had created in the first place. I did a long storyline, is probably the one I'm most proud of, that led up into issue 200. It had been forgotten that Dr. Doom and Reed Richards had been friends and roommates. They had become such big enemies by that point. The emotional connection between them was dropped. The concept was it had to be character-driven. Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom, the old friends, having some final confrontation, and they had never had that in the 200 issues preceding. There's been very good runs of the Fantastic Four, constantly good runs of the Fantastic Four, depending upon the writers, and one of the best was about 2 or 3 years ago when the writer Mark Waid came in and rethought out pretty much all those characters from scratch.
When I got the call, editor Tom Brevoort and I started talking about the characters, and we realized, okay, well, a lot's been done with Johnny over the years, and a lot's been done with Ben. He's arguably the most defined character in the Marvel Universe. Sue, is still kind of a wild card. It kind of depends on what writer's doing her as to what her personality is. But boy, Reed's just a big blank slate. That's kind of what we decided. Reed is the guy who no reader under the age of 50 thinks is cool, because now we're in an age of Wolverine and Spider-Man and active heroes, and Reed is the big brain. How do we make that work? The idea that Reed, it could be Buckaroo Banzai by way of Indiana Jones, by way of Albert Einstein, and that's just something we've never really played with. So what we did, and pretty much the mission statement was, we turned the paradigm and we made Reed the star of the book. The notion that it worked because nobody had done that for such a long time. But it really worked when you started thinking about why the team exists. Reed has a secret guilt that he's never talked to anyone about. He's the one who took them up in the rocket ship that didn't have the right shielding. He's the one who is responsible for what happened to them, and Reed will never forget how he took his best friends and his loved ones and he turned them into freaks. And the best he could do is give them in exchange a life nobody ever could have dreamed of, because he wanted them to not feel like freaks. What the cartoon show did successfully was they sort of took 45 years of the Fantastic Four and distilled it down into its core elements, and they took different elements from different eras.
When we're looking at making the animated versions of these characters for the shows like Fantastic Four, the great thing about it is you've got a wealth of material at your disposal. The goal with a show like this for me is to take the truth of those characters and really bring it to the screen.
Whitey, stop.
Oh, what did Johnny do?
I think he came up with a plan.
Oh, crud.
We definitely tried to modernize everything with the characters as well.
We wanted these guys in their prime, so they should have had a young, fun vibe. They're in a world that loves and celebrates them, so it should be fun.
You can count me out of these Sunday drives. Too bumpy.
Did the widow walk pile twist a pebble out of place?
I know the comics, I know them inside and out, and we've made changes here and there extensively, but as much as we humanly can, we try to get in, things that the fans will know and recognize and have some fun with, like Herbie.
Come on, Herbie. Come on.
Hi, Dr. Richards! Did we win?
We sure did, Herbie. Thanks to you.
Hooray!
There were a couple of instances in the show where we actually took a visual from the comic and tried to bring it to life. There was the famous cover to Fantastic Four #1 where a Giganto was coming out of the ground and the Fantastic Four were all fighting it, and we tried to kind of recreate that.
Susan!
And it was just fun to kind of bring those visual, key moments from the comics to life. The great thing about the Marvel Universe and the comics that Stan and Jack kind of set up was that it's all taking place in the same universe, that New York was the most insane and happening place in the world. So not only did you have the Fantastic Four there, but you'd have the Avengers and Spider-Man and the X-Men and all of these superheroes and supervillains just kind of converging in one place. So doubtlessly they were going to run into each other. And that was one of the most fun things for me. Brought in Ant-Man.
Everyone, I'd like you to meet Dr. Henry Pym, also known as Ant-Man.
Hi there.
And She-Hulk. Submariner.
I am Namor, Prince of Atlantis.
One of my favorite episodes had the Hulk and the Thing actually go at it.
What are you doing, you numbskull? Not me. Them. Attack them. That man made fun of Hulk's mama.
The Thing and the Hulk have long-standing you know, rivalry between these two characters that go all the way back to the comics. So to see those two characters going head to head and to see that battle animated, it's pretty neat.
Okay, if that's how we have to do it. Hey, P-Brain, bring it on!
The joy I had of saying, wow, I'm getting to write lines for Ben Grimm. I'm getting to show Reed Richards' nerdy side. It's exciting.
I was able to trap an electron of the microverse energy, then reverse its trajectory, which polarized the atom. Neat, nerds!
The great thing about, like, you know, doing the show is you get to introduce the characters and, like, this entire world to a bunch of younger fans who don't necessarily know about it.
You know how many times you've let us down? Ever? About 0.
There's always a way. You know who told me that? You did, Stretch.
Let's go clobber this guy.
Flame on!
I mean, the legacy of the Fantastic Four is that without the Fantastic Four, we might not have comics today. That in 1961, Stan and Jack said, let's break all the rules and let's try something new because the superhero genre doesn't interest us. And they reinvented it with one issue of one comic in 1961, and from that, pretty much everything we know about comics sprang. There's no kind of story you can't tell with the Fantastic Four. You can tell a mystery story, you can tell an outer space adventure, you can tell a comedy, you can tell a story about the smallest of things and the most gigantic of disasters, all with these characters.
For me, superheroes only became interesting and relatable when those guys began. Because they didn't create gods, they created guys and gals like you and me and everybody else out there. And they gave them powers, and they said life is worse with these powers. At the very least, more complicated.
I'm never gonna be normal again, am I?
Maybe not, but you'll always be Ben Grimm.
Welcome back, brickhead!
I think that we've been very lucky. The Fantastic Four has been successful as a comic book, as a TV animated series, as a big budget motion picture. In fact, video games. I mean, there's no part of human endeavor that the Fantastic Four hasn't been successful in. And I guess one of the reasons is the characters themselves are interesting.
People who would never look at a comic book, never pick up an action figure, never play a video.
No one here to save you.
In adventure stories, the villain is almost more important than the hero, because it's the villain that gives you the excitement and the suspense and the danger, and how is the hero going to get out of this one, you know?
To be a villain of the Fantastic Four universe, you have to bring a certain big flair to the table.
Now you can bear witness to my rise to power.
The goals always have to be really huge and impossible to achieve, and the means have to be over the top.
I think in the FF, the best villains have a grudge against them, and it's personal. No matter who you're dealing with, there's always the ones that rise to the top.
Every month you needed a new villain, except I would often bring a villain back again if he got very popular, and probably the most popular one was Dr. Doom.
Dr. Doom is the ultimate character. He's the one that every other bad villain, every other supervillain is trying to be.
Every time he's up to something, you know it's not good, and even the Fantastic Four don't joke around all the time when they're facing off with him.
This time, your precious city will not survive.
He's the one who is Reed's equal. I mean, they grew up together. He blames Reed for everything that he lost. Doom's only focus is the destruction of Reed Richards.
You brought this upon yourself, Richards. You dared to match your intellect against mine.
As you go on in his life, he turned to mysticism and magic, which was very smart, because that is a place Reed has very little understanding and no acceptance.
He's sort of in this perpetual rivalry.
You and your friends are forever at the mercy of Doom.
Doom, it was just fantastic. He's one of my favorites for the show.
The melding of science and mysticism.
Diablo the Alchemist is one of the classic villains for Fantastic Four. He's like a 16th century Spanish, kind of like half wizard, half science.
The power of the elements is mine!
There was an interesting rivalry that grew up between Diablo, who was trying to master the mystic arts, basically, and Reed, who was trying to counter him with his inventions.
Alchemy isn't real. This isn't science, and it certainly isn't magic.
Diablo was great. I loved that the bulk of the episode was Reed saying that magic doesn't exist and that he's going to prove him wrong the whole time. At the end when he says, "Take that, magic," I love that because Reed's such a hardcore science guy. I love what that character did to him.
Yeah! Take that, magic! I'm already under your control, aren't I?
Oh, yes.
Puppet Master is another one of the Fantastic Four's classic villains. He's like basically a failed artist that comes into possession of this irradiated clay. And when he makes a little statue of Reed Richards, he finds out he can control Reed Richards.
Puppet, stop them! I can take control of any one of you at any time.
He's the down and out, picked on, created by a society foe. I like it because you can kind of see where he's coming from because he's been so mistreated.
I deserve respect!
Puppet Master was a challenge to create stories for because when he's winning, there's no way that the heroes can be fighting back because they're being controlled.
Mr. Fantastic, please.
He's a really powerful character, so we had to be careful how we told his story because very quickly he could take over the whole world.
Finally, I will get the respect I deserve. I control everyone. It's glorious.
Reed, you did say...
Impossible Man's great. It's a character that both Herbie, the computer, and Reed just can't believe. Reed, being the scientist, realizes that everything he does is just like physically impossible. So it's a challenge for him to deal with that.
He was tricky because he has so much power that how do you stop him from literally destroying the world or destroying the universe? So we gave him sort of a childlike personality.
Come on, let's do more, see more. Let's go outside, have some fun.
You're not going anywhere, Runt.
He's basically addicted to playing games. He loves to have fun, so he's not really interested in causing trouble for anybody. He just wants to find a playmate. Some of the villains we wanted to make very serious threats to the Fantastic Four, and at times that meant skewing them a little darker, making them a little bit more scary or intimidating. Annihilus is sort of the crazed off-world conqueror, and he's so not human.
Your invasion ends now.
Annihilus is one of the Fantastic Four's just full-on evil villains. I mean, he's a creature from another dimension, like the leader of a race of insectoid creatures in the negative zone. And he is basically against life in general.
This is my universe, and you cannot have it.
Oh, yeah. Well, we forgot to tell you, Stretch. He's nuts.
So when the Fantastic Four are trying to reason with him or fight against him, what they're coming up against is a very alien logic, even more alien than the other alien species that they fight, because this guy is from a completely different dimension.
Hey, ask him his name.
What did you say your name was?
Annihilate.
Let me be the first to properly welcome you. I am the Mole Man.
Mole Man is a classic Fantastic Four villain, and part of his greatness is that he's just kind of so ridiculous.
Mole Man, no, he's just straight up ugly.
Ugly, you say?
And that's his plight. He's so grotesque, he went underground, just created a whole new world, found these creatures that are even more disgusting than him, and decided that he's going to make the surface world pay for all their hatred.
Soon the surface world will pay for mocking me.
He's just this filthy, despicable character that is always funny to watch because his schemes are so huge and yet at the same time harebrained.
Each of the monster's eggs is about to hatch,
He will be mine to command.
There was some sincere emotion behind his motives, but he had just been underground so long. He got crazy.
Another great villain for the Fantastic Four was the Submariner.
I am Namor, Prince of Atlantis.
Here was a man who was a villain in the sense that he fought the heroes, but he had great justification for it. He was not a bad guy.
He wants to protect his people and protect the oceans and protect the seas.
We know what the world's like now and the environment and our mistreating of it, so he really speaks to that, and he did long ago.
Humanity defiles the oceans with their filth, so you may no longer have the oceans.
And I love Namor because he's not a villain. He shows the wide range of the kinds of heroes you can face in Marvel.
We've been very lucky. The Fantastic Four has so many great villains.
People who would never look at a comic book pop on their TVs and they learn about these characters and they love them.
There's so many directions to go with all of these characters that there's just an endless amount of stories you can tell.
You just get this incredible feeling that you're part of something much bigger than yourself, and that's really what the Marvel Universe is.
The Fantastic Four, they're the favorites of so many people, including me, and I just hope that it goes on forever.